All right. Well, hello and welcome to Ask the Expert, where we ask industry leaders about their unique perspective on how to navigate some of the most difficult challenges faced by the broader real estate and financial services ecosystem, and also give you a chance to ask the expert some of the most pressing questions on your mind. Welcome, everyone. I'm Chuck from the state's Title BizOps team, and today I am very excited to welcome Bryan Bergjans, Senior Vice President and National Director of Military and Veteran Lending at Caliber Home Loans, to talk about lending to the military and veteran community. Some background on Bryan: he has over 16 years of experience in the mortgage industry, specializing in implementing strategic initiatives to achieve military and veteran portfolio growth. And he's spent the last several years writing and designing military and veteran exclusive loan officer and realtor training curriculums to try to close that education gap within our industry and share his knowledge more broadly. So welcome, Bryan.
Hey, thanks for having me. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, same. So I think we have a lot in common. I think we're both third generation military. Both of us served in Afghanistan. I think, the only main difference is your decision to join the Navy and mine to join the Army, which was definitely not based on anyone's irrational fear of the open ocean. But very excited to talk today about VA loans.
Me too. Me too. Even though you're Army, it's all good.
We can shake hands for 30 minutes, I think.
Yes,
So.
we can.
All right. Well, just to get us kicked off, I know a big part of your job is educating the broader market, both loan officers, realtors, and veterans themselves, on understanding, what's important about VA loans and lending to veterans. And I was wondering if you could just talk about what, from your point of view, is most important for everyone to understand about lending when it comes to the veteran community.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Chuck. I think the big thing here that a lot of people forget is it's a benefit, right? We're not talking about a loan here, really. We're talking about a benefit, and it's an earned benefit, right? So people doing FHA loans and conventional loans and stuff like that, they're not earning. They didn't go and serve or put their life on the line, or enlist in the military for 15 years or whatever, to go and be able to get conventional loan, right? So you have to do certain things to earn this benefit. So understanding that it's a benefit also helps as to why we would always ask the question to people, have you served, right? Because we want to make sure that the folks who have earned this benefit get an opportunity to use it, because it's a fantastic benefit and one that's well deserved, right? So,
Right.
and I think all your lending professionals out there that might be watching this, and even the real estate professionals or anyone in the industry over the last couple of years, couldn't argue that VA has great rates, 100% financing, no money down. You know what I mean? Yeah, you have a little bit out of pocket here and there, but structurally wise, it's the best. It's the best in the business for these folks who have earned that benefit. And I always tell people, you want to give our veterans an opportunity to use it. And I think, unfortunately, as an industry, we have not done enough to ensure that our veterans and our active duty military and our reservists are, getting the opportunity to use it.
Yeah, and that's a great point, that is a benefit. And I think, perhaps people are thinking, where's the catch, and what's different about this program? And I think, you've done a lot of work, a tremendous amount, to explain these topics that you've talked about, here on VA loans, and that it is a benefit. And I guess, how do you see this as your education efforts and everyone kind of learning a bit more about the program? How does that support business development on the lender and realtor side?
Oh, well, I always, we have this commitment to, we call it community engagement through education, right? And I think you can just take the VA thing out of the equation. Anytime you're willing to educate folks to help them make a more informed decision on the biggest investment they'll ever make in their entire life, it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win for our industry and win for the consumer. Now you take a niche program, a niche benefit like VA, you know what I mean? And, one that we know for a fact there is a huge gap of knowledge from perception and reality, right? Myth and reality out there. And now you're giving people the accurate and timely knowledge that they need to better serve, whether it's one veteran or military person a year or 100, right? Giving them the knowledge that they have never had offered to them before. And, and that's huge. And what happens after a while, especially if you're committed to this demographic and you're providing accurate and timely information to your, business partners and consumers, you become the go-to subject matter expert or, trusted advisor for that specific customer base, right? And if that's something you're really passionate about and you enjoy doing, like I love working with military and vets, you know what I mean? I love working with, you know, uh, folks transitioning out of the military and all that stuff because I've been in the military since 95. You know what I mean? It's like in my DNA, I want to help. And I just think when you offer yourself out there to do that, after so much of putting yourself out there and educating people, you will be the go-to, and the law of reciprocity kicks in, right? And
Right.
you get back what you give. And so that's why I think education is a big piece to all this, and we can all work together, collaborate more as an industry to ensure that we are educating these folks.
Yeah, I think, I totally agree with you. And I keep thinking of examples of companies like USA and other companies that have been able to form really strong kind of multi-generational relationships with military and military families. And I guess, what do you think that, is it something about understanding the language of the military community, or, how does a company position itself to kind of understand, outside of the education on just the kind of nuts and bolts of what is a VA loan, what can they do to build those better, stronger relationships with military customers?
Well, I think, to be honest, it mirrored the market you want to serve, right?
Mhm.
So, one thing that, we have done a really good job of, especially with our group that focuses on supporting the military, is we hired veterans and military spouses and folks that mirror the market that we're trying to serve, right?
Mhm.
It's not, it's extremely difficult for somebody who's never served a day in their life or been associated with the military to create and design programs and initiatives to address pain points for that, or for that group, right? I
Right.
mean, they might not even know the right questions to ask. They've never been there. They've never done that. They never relocated. They never deployed.
Mhm.
They don't know, about employment history, about spousal employment problems, all that kind of stuff that goes into better serving that demographic. That's why I always say you got to hire those folks that you want to serve to on your team. You know, transitioning military, veterans,
Mhm.
military spouses, they're all important keys and pieces to the puzzle to being able to effectively, work with and address concerns. Because bottom line is with consumers, it's it's value and product, right? Well, we're all homes and mortgages, but now it's what's your value prop? Well, value prop is we have people who generally understand what you're going through and helping you.
Mhm.
So it's not you don't feel like you're having to work hard as a consumer to try to explain to this organization what's going on or how you're relocating, or your husband or wife is deployed and you're left by yourself relocating on your own, on house hunting leave. And you got someone on the other line going, what are you even talking about right now? Right.
Yeah.
So it's, that type of sincerity and full on commitment to helping, translates huge, right?
Mhm.
That to me, yeah, and some organizations have probably gotten away with, having a pretty good impact, but not hiring a lot of vets, and I get it. But to me personally, and as a military person and the folks that I've, spoke with and talked to that I trust, in the industries and stuff, having folks like that serving those folks is huge, and it's a
Mhm.
benefit to the consumer, and it's a benefit to your organization.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd argue that the next step there also is encouraging those veteran employees to share their experience and talk to the rest of the team, right? Because I don't think, well, we may never get to a point of every VA loan is served by a veteran, right? And so I think, things like what you're doing here, and what you've done over the past few years are really kind of tremendously important to spread that information and get a better shared understanding on the team.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I found, so before the pandemic, obviously, we traveled a ton. I think my average was about 130 days on the road a year, and
Mhm.
so were the folks on my team. But what you get out of that is you get to talk to real people and real communities, asking them about real issues that they're having, right? And most folks won't open up with somebody unless they feel like they have something in common with that person. So being a vet, like we talked about before, Chuck, you get a bunch of vets in a room, and all of a sudden, within an hour, you have the ones that've been deployed over here, the ones that haven't been deployed over there, or they went over here, somebody served in that, right? You know what I mean? And then they find the people that
Yes.
everybody came there because they were vets, but within an hour, they start to get into the groups of the people that they really have stuff in common with. Same way with the military community. That's why, going out there and serving, when we're out there traveling and teaching and educating, finding out that, spouses carry the burden, mostly of the burden of the home moving, PCSing burden, why wouldn't we want to hire spouses to work with spouses to find out what's really going on and how we can help and alleviate, and relieve a lot of those pain points as a lender through education and whatever else we can do. So I think, that part right there is something that a lot of folks just need to seriously consider if they want to get and want to work with this, with the military. Military is underserved.
Mhm.
We already know it. It's not a secret. It's a very underserved demographic, number one. Number two, the program itself is underutilized, and those are two,
Mhm.
and those are two big problems.
Yeah, and it's interesting. You mentioned the military spouse and how important they are in the buying and selling process. I remember growing up in a military family, there was always that big decision: do we buy a house? Do we rent? And there's those kind of decisions. To me, it seems come up maybe more often than the general consumer when you're talking about moving every 3 to 5 years. And I guess the question for me is that now that I'm out of the military, I'm not super keen on moving again, right, within 3 years. So like, I guess how does that translate to you? How do you see the difference between the active duty service member versus the veteran who's left the service, and how do you drive a distinction between how you serve those two?
Well, one thing's different about veterans that we found, interesting and also eye-opening is you have a large group of veterans, especially Vietnam era, 80s,
Hmm.
early 90s, before anything really started happening, that were in the reserves and stuff that had no idea that they even qualify for VA or they're even
Right.
entitled to VA home loan benefit in general, right? Um, and we owe a lot to the Vietnam vets, to be frankly honest, especially all of us that have served overseas at post 9/11. If their endless efforts to make sure that we always get welcome home or
Hmm.
something to be extremely proud of. And I thank those guys and gals from the bottom of my heart all the time. But they don't even know that they are even entitled to this stuff. So that's why it goes back to the simple question of always asking people, have you served? Because those folks who served in the reserves in Vietnam or served in the 80s, they don't even think that this even
Hmm.
revolves on them when you talk to them. They're like, I didn't even know that this was something that I was even entitled to. And so educating them is extremely important because, they don't even know. They're not even attached to the military anymore. They wouldn't even have any idea because the VA didn't even change the rules for reservists until like 1992.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
the veteran population is way bigger than the active duty population, right? And
Hmm.
so this is where the education and awareness comes into play. And it all starts with us, the industry, like realtors and loan officers, to ask the simple question, have you served? You know, a lot of, it's unfortunate. I think anybody that raises their right hand deserves, all the credit in the world, regardless if he served, in the reserves or not. But unfortunately, that period of time in the reserves in the 80s, a lot of those people don't even feel like their service is even worth even talking about.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
you get through that. So,
And like we talked about, I think even today, when you're transitioning out of the military, you've got maybe a couple weeks to understand the full range of benefits, medical, all these things that are happening. And you may not, like like we were talking about, you may not even remember that the VA loan was talked about. It might just be a blur of the, you have to pay for your own healthcare now kind of conversations. So I take the point on education and asking, have you served is really important in these conversations. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're talking to a veteran who's been out of the military for 25 years and has had a
mhm.
civilian job for a long time, and the military thing could be potentially way deep into their past. If you don't ask them if they serve, you're going to put them in a loan program or product or something like that might not be as good as the VA home loan benefit had they known that they qualified for it. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
were entitled to it. So I just think the one simple question, have you served? That's where it all starts.
Yeah, and I guess and that reminds me of the Blue Water Navy Vietnam Veterans Act. Speaking of that
Yeah.
era of veterans, is just it's been out in effect for about a year plus now. And I was wondering if you could talk to more of the tangible benefits that has created, and maybe things that veterans may not be aware of through that act.
Yeah, so obviously, long overdue benefits to our Navy veterans. So this law that went into effect is, obviously very impactful to that group. But because of the pandemic, because of COVID, this huge change to the VA home loan benefit kind of just rolled under the cover of night,
Mm,
right?
right.
For the last 13 months. And basically, I think it's a win-win across the board for everybody, veterans and military, active duty military people that are about to retire. Because what happened was, and it's been long overdue,
Mhm.
the VA has no, loan limits anymore. It used to be tied to the conventional, county conventional loan limit, et cetera. That was kind of how I won't bore you with the calculation stuff, but it used to kind of be tied to that, right? Where you can only go in at a certain level, and anything above that would require a down payment from the bank. Now they removed it. So basically, anybody that has full entitlement, right, would be able to go into any market, and as long as they can afford it and the lenders are willing to lend to that number, could realistically buy $1 million, $2 million, $2.5 million house with no down payment. And what I love about this, is our active duty folks who are transitioning right into retirement. They're going to work somewhere else. It's a big win for them because you got people who've served in the military for 30 years, and really their retirement is the annuity, the monthly annuity, basically payment that they get for the rest of their life, right?
Mhm.
So
Right.
before TSP really came into play in this blended retirement system, I mean, that was it. So now you have people, they can't really go and buy their forever home, the one that they really want, because they don't
Mhm.
have 250 grand to put down, right? So
Right.
now you give these people the opportunity, if they can afford it, to go buy their forever home that they've been, waiting 30 years to do, because now the program allows for that to happen, which I think is awesome. Extremely excited for that, and that's just something that's long overdue, and absolutely fantastic for those folks and for veterans that have been, in the civilian sector for years, that have to work on the coast, like
Mm.
where it's highly competitive. The prices are rising. Buying $1 million house now in California and Seattle and
Yeah,
DC and stuff,
Boston. Mm.
it's like normal day. And now folks can come in and not have a down payment. I mean, that's huge. I mean, that is a game changer, and one that we still don't talk enough about, because I think, with the pandemic and refi boom and all this other stuff, that a lot of things have kind of overshadowed it. But that's a significant impact with that law. And then one other little tidbit about that law that's pretty impactful is now folks that are serving on active duty with a Purple Heart are exempt from the funding fee, where before
Mm.
they used to have to wait until they got out of service. And there's,
Get the
believe
raise.
it or not, there's a lot of people serving in the military, especially your brothers and sisters in the army. Uh,
Mhm.
with Purple Hearts and a lot of Marine Corps folks too, for more of the, a lot of places that they serve, they're still on active duty with Purple Hearts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately, I know a few.
Yeah.
It's a
And
great.
now they're exempt from funding fee because of that law, which is great. That's long overdue too, right? So
Mhm.
two big impactful uh, things to the actual veteran out of that law. And there's some other stuff in there too, but
Mhm.
those are my two, top big impacts right there out of that.
Well, awesome. Thanks for sharing all that information with us. We do have a question from the audience, and one I want to pitch to you. So the question is: the appraisers and real estate agents are often or sometimes hesitant to deal with VA loans, as they think either the appraisal will come in low, or there's a lot more work involved, or things of that nature. And how can lenders educate the other professionals involved in this process to reassure them that this is a loan, this is a benefit, and it's something that we want to be involved in?
Well, that's an awesome question, and I'm actually glad that came up because typically when we're teaching and traveling and teaching, when I'm at the part of my presentation where I tell people that the VA appraisal is actually the best appraisal in the game, typically everything goes silent. You can hear a pin drop
Mm,
because unfortunately, appraisers, especially VA appraisals, have had a bad rep for
mm,
decades, right? And they always, used to joke around back when I first got into this business that that's where a good deal went to die, right? Was the VA appraisal. But I will tell you that the VA appraisal process is actually the best in the business, and I'm going to tell you why. Because conventional and FHA loans, right? If an appraisal is about to come in low, that's it. You're done. They submit it. That's the value. You move on. With VA, if it's about to come in low, the realtor initiates a thing called Tidewater, which Tidewater gives an opportunity to the other, to the listing agent or whoever else is involved to provide comps to
mm,
support a purchase, the purchase price. So it's kind of like hey, we haven't submitted it. This is what we think it's going to be. Submit to me anything that would support the purchase price.
mm,
And then they do. And then the appraiser like, oh, you know what? I missed that comp, or here, let me adjust this comp to the first position, or however they do it. And they're like, you know what? Great. No harm, no foul. They haven't even submitted it to VA yet. And see where you have the tug of war in our industry is that conventional and FHA, when somebody comes in low and you ask somebody to change it,
mm,
being graded on how accurate their appraisals are, what do you think they're going to say?
yeah.
No, right? They don't win either way. They don't. You're mad at them, but they're like, hey, if I say I messed up and I
Mhm.
change it, the lender
It's
hits
on
me
me.
for right,
Yeah.
right. So it's you're gonna lose every single time. No appraiser's gonna go, my bad, I messed up, and let me fix
Mm,
that for you. No, but Tidewater provides that opportunity, that safe place where people can have the conversation and show comps to fix that. Another caveat too about appraisals, and this is why our real estate professionals and our lenders have to work together because VA has minimum property requirements, right? So a lot of that's
mm,
around safety, sanitary, and soundness of the house, right? So we don't want stuff falling off the house. You don't want the roof caving in. You don't want the foundation jacked up.
mm,
It's a lot of different things. Handrails, exposed electric, all those things. My philosophy is if you're a lender and a realtor and you know this going in, then you probably don't want to show a veteran a bunch of houses that need renovation, right?
mm.
Or that need a lot of work to it. If you're not expecting, you know what I mean? If you want a
Yeah, that's a good
quick
point.
30-day transaction, right? I mean, there's other things you can do, renovation loans and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just talking if you want a smooth, painless transaction, just don't show houses like that if you can. I know in some
Mm,
markets that's tough because of inventories are low and you just got to do what you got to do. But having these conversations with everybody's important and make sure the lights are turned on, there's no exposed
mm,
electric, the water's on, all that stuff will save you tons of time and 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 frustrations with the appraisal process itself. But to go back to what we are saying, you know, uh, Tidewater is the best in the game.
mm,
And I can tell you, uh, it works. It's a great process. And when you dig deep into a loan, sometimes after it doesn't, it even doesn't meet back with Tidewater,
mm.
you can send it to VA to have one of their appraisers review it again.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's,
you can't get
that's
that
awesome.
on conventional and FHA.
Yeah. Well,
So,
it's interesting, and then I think we have time to sneak in one more question. And you mentioned the low inventory market, so this one's from Greg Anderson. He says, "Thank you for your service. I'll thank you for your continued service for me, of course. In a low inventory market like Seattle, do you have any tips on how to get a VA loan offer accepted?" And he says, "Go Caliber."
yeah. So one of the things I always tell folks, and we do a lot of conversations with, the consumer.
Hmm.
And one of the things that we tell them, obviously, is to be prepared for this. And the way you can get prepared is to ensure that you have. So the way I always look at it is this: when you got a consumer coming in that wants to use their VA home loan benefit, I think what scares sellers the most is they get these contracts, but there's a lot of what ifs behind that contract.
Hmm.
My suggestion on how to win a VA sales contract a lot of times is to make sure that that consumer's already been through the rounds with underwriting, right? That income, assets, and everything's already been approved. So now the customer only needs to find a house.
Hmm.
That that alleviates a ton of issues already when your realtor is going to the seller saying, "Hey, he's already approved. All he's finding is a house." And now they don't have to worry about missing closing times because the appraisal turn times are less than 2 weeks in every market, pretty much across the United States, unless you live 7 hours away in the middle of rural somewhere, right? You just cut the time down, and that gives that seller way more confidence in the process. Also, too, work with your buyers and your consumer to say, hey, is there any little bit of information we might be able to share with the seller? Letting them know that you're in a good financial position, because unfortunately, the unconscious bias with VA has always been, for some weird reason, because it's a government backed loan, people think it's a subprime customer, and that is just not the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
Last year, the average FICO score for VA was well into the 700s, and it's been like that for years. And the consumer FICO scores never reached 700 until I think 2019.
Right.
So the consumers have assets, plenty of money, and a great credit score. And I think if the sellers knew that going in, they wouldn't feel so bad.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I think, I agree with you. And to wrap this up, I think there's still tremendous opportunity. And one, I'd like to say, again, thanks for your service. And two, thank you for coming on to Ask the Expert and continuing your campaign of education on this.
Well, thank you for having me, and I appreciate everybody tuning in, and look forward to helping more vets.
Thanks, Bryan.
Thank
See
you.
you all.